Hello, the Larkettes. It's John Bishop here. Marian has asked me to send you a message because obviously it's difficult times for everybody with not being able to see each other as often, and also because of this coronavirus thing. However, I am pleased that now we've got a government who know what they're doing. I mean, you've got to trust in Boris. At last, he's recognised that the virus doesn't get busy until after 10 o'clock, which is a good thing. So do what you want up till 10 o'clock. Obviously, as long as there's not more than 6 of you, because everybody knows that it's always your 7th mate that's the dodgy one. He's the one who's most likely to infect you, the one who's the 7th, which is a little bit odd because Kenny used to wear the number 7. I'm not saying that means anything, I'm just putting the fact out. Also, what I like about the fact that the government has now recognised that the virus is so clever, it knows whether you're in England, Scotland, Northern Ireland or Wales, which is why we've all got different rules, because that's how clever it is. It also knows whether you're working at home or at work, because if you're at work and there's more than 6 of you in the building, then obviously the virus still goes, they're at work, let's leave the lads alone, they're busy. And if you're at home, then obviously it's okay if you're at home, provided that when your kid goes to school, they don't bring anyone back, because they can have like 30 kids in a class, but they can't have 6 of them back to play in the park. So it's good that we're on top of all of this, but the biggest problem is clearly the fact that you can't get a test. And that is a problem, and I know it's a worry for all of you. So I've got a test for you. The biggest thing that everyone says with coronavirus is that you lose your sense of smell and taste. So the best thing that you can do is you get a bottle of wine and you just pour it in. It can be any wine, it can be white or red, it works with beer or whiskey or anything of that nature. And what you do is you smell it. And if you can smell the wine, that's a good sign. That means you probably haven't got coronavirus. But the other symptom is that you lose your taste. So after you've smelled it, you've got to have a taste. And see if you can taste the wine. And if you can taste the wine and you can smell the wine, there's a good chance you haven't got coronavirus. But as everybody knows, no test is perfect. And there's been a lot of false positives. So the best thing to do after you've tested yourself once is just test yourself again. Just see if you can still smell it. And see if you can still taste it. And once you've done that, and you've got a baseline, the best thing that you can do is to test yourself again. Because everyone says, Boris Johnson himself says, the more tests that you get, the better. I mean, even the Health Secretary, Dominic Raab, who I know looks like someone who's just surprised himself by wetting his own pants, because he always looks like that. But even he says, get as many tests as you can. So you're doing what the government are telling you. By testing yourself again, just have that sniff. And I can still taste it. And it's important that you keep testing yourself. I mean, I must have tested myself about 45 times last night. And to be fair, I felt okay going to bed, but then I woke up a bit, with cold sweats and a headache. So I don't know whether I'm coming down with something. But I'm going to make sure I test myself a lot today. And you should do.
Hello. There are many messages out there about alcohol and the health issues regarding drinking alcohol. Now, a lot of that message is not getting through, so I'm going to demonstrate. I have 2 worms here. Oops. I'm going to drop one in alcohol and one in water. You see? The one in water, still very lively. The one in alcohol has been killed instantly. Now, what does that tell you? Well, I'll tell you what it tells me, and I'm going to illustrate the message to you, that if you drink alcohol, you'll never be troubled with worms. Cheers.
Oh, there he is, Steve. All right, Steve, mate. Fancy popping over for a barbecue tomorrow? Oh, there he is. Hello, mate. How many people you got coming over? 42 at the moment, mate. Whoa, slow down, mate. What about COVID? Shut up, you wet wipe. The virus ain't about this weekend. That's why Boris ain't changing the rules till Monday. The virus got the weekend off. God, fucking hell, it's a funny old virus, isn't it? I don't know the half of it. This virus proper clued up, mate. Proper intelligent virus. If you're in a group of 6 next week, you're all right. Group of 7, you're fucked. The fuck? That's mental. Mate, yeah. Unless you're at work, then you're all right. The virus knows if you're at work, and it won't get you there. Eh? Yeah. If you're at school, right, it knows you're at school. You're safe. If you're protesting, it knows. You're all right doing that and all. Restaurants, if you're eating, having a beer, you're fine. But if you're getting an Uber without a mask, it'll fucking kill you. Nutty virus, innit, eh? Fuck it, next week, yeah? No more than 6 people, eh? That's S Club 7 fuckling, isn't it? And the 7 dwarfs. Yeah, one of them ain't going to be happy. You nutter. Anyway, mate, I best go. Me and the missus are going dogging. Bareback. Careful doing that, mate. You could get AIDS. We already thought of that. Don't worry about it. We've got it sussed. We've got everything covered. There's only 5 of us going, right? We're doing it before Monday. We're all going to wear school uniforms, right? And we're going to do some sort of protest while I'm fucking bumming the bird. Do you know what I mean? The viruses won't know what's going on. You're a nutter, mate. Well, tell your missus not to forget to wear her mask, eh? Why's that? Because she's fucking rank. I'll see you soon then.
100 kilos of pure Colombian cocaine, untouched. Here is Barry on a one-way train to Seslehem. Barry was offered a tipple, but Barry never fucks around and piles straight in. It is said that Barry used to party with Pablo Escobar. What a mad gap. Ian the Fox has had his first taste of cocaine. The lads told him to take it easy, but Ian also does not fuck about. He jumps into pile after pile. Calm it down, Ian, is what I keep thinking, but Ian waits for no man. Ian is beginning to slack. The inevitable come-down looms over him, but he's not giving up. He wants one last hit. No, Ian, don't do it, everyone is thinking. But Ian, being the mad crockshoe that he is, he puts his body on the line. The last laugh? Maybe not, but he's certainly got the last line. Ian the mad bastard.
Nice to see you again.
Hello, doctor.
You here for your annual checkup?
Yes.
Good. Before we get started, how's everything been?
I'm still married, so pretty shitty.
Oh, you know what they say. Secret to a happy marriage remains a secret.
Oh, that doesn't help me at all.
Do you smoke?
No.
You sure?
No.
You're not sure?
I mean, I occasionally have like a cigarette or like a joint or crack.
It's a yes or no question, Diego.
Okay, yes.
Do you drink?
No.
Are you sure?
I mean, like casually, like at a party or a wedding or something like that, or at like my house, alone, every night.
What do you drink?
Just like a glass of wine at dinner.
Okay, that's healthy.
And then a shot of tequila.
Okay.
And then another shot. And then a few more. And then some more. And then I usually pass out. Then I wake up and I take a few more.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah, I drink.
Do you take any drugs?
No.
Are you sure?
I mean, like, occasionally I'll smoke a little weed here and there. Like, I'll do a little blow at a party. Some shrooms. Nothing crazy.
Yes or no?
Yes, I take drugs.
Any prescription pills or over-the-counter medicine?
No.
You sure?
I mean, like, I take, like, Advil, Motrin, Tylenol, stuff like that.
How often?
Every time my wife talks to me.
Why?
Because I know it's going to give me a headache.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
Diego, are you a stressed person?
Me? No, not at all.
How's your wife?
Okay, I'm stressed.
You engaging in sexual activity?
No.
You sure?
I mean, like, occasionally, like, on our anniversary, stuff like that.
And this activity is with your wife? Well, whoever you're having sex with, are you using protection?
I don't like guns.
I mean a condom.
Oh, yes.
Are you sure?
I mean, there are exceptions.
How many exceptions?
I can't remember.
Why can't you remember?
Because I drink.
Why do you drink?
Because I'm stressed.
And what do you do when you're stressed?
Prescription drugs.
And what causes the stress?
My life.
Well, Diego, if it isn't obvious already, I'd say the source of the problem is pretty apparent.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
Obviously, the biggest problem in your life is...
That I don't drink enough.
What?
What?
Yeah?
Yep, Dad.
Right. So what is your name and occupation?
My name's Claire Higgins. I've been a clinical support worker at Maidstone site now for almost 12 years. I'm just bank staff for the last 2 years though now to fit around my young daughter.
Right.
The department, I was on Chaucer ward, which was it was meant to be like a stroke assessment ward. Often just elderly, frail care unit. Really, that was kind of what it was.
Okay, and what ward have you currently been working on? And for how long?
I've been on that ward. Chaucer ward got closed at the beginning of our lockdown. Even though we had positive patients, we transferred those up to Edith Cavell and Peel wards, which were upstairs. Peel was a women's gynae ward, and Edith Cavell was an elderly frail unit.
Righto. On the 23rd of March, lockdown was decreed. What instant changes in patient numbers and policy did you see compared with normal procedure?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have said we was inundated at all. That was how many beds did we
Because that's
have?
what we was led to believe,
Yeah,
that hospitals were going to be chockers.
Mason, the wards that I've worked on, which we were told were the COVID wards, they've been dead now for quite a while, quite empty. Yes, at
Which
the beginning,
wards were they?
That was Edith. I was on Peel ward.
Right.
We were told that next door, Edith Cavell, because you know you go up the corridor and they split. That we was told that they were acute next door, and quite often through this they've had low numbers just like us as well.
Right.
I believe that there were some acute patients in ITU, but when we checked on the iPods, which gave you a full rundown of how many people were in all of these wards, again, they weren't particularly busy either. A lot of the wards weren't.
Right. So generally, not busy.
No, not busy at all. Like I say, Chaucer was closed quite early on. We turned up one day for a shift, one night for a shift, and there was a padlock being put on the door. And that
Padlock?
Yeah, they padlocked the doors. That was a 28-bed ward. And like I say, that I'd been there the night before, and we had positive patients, which they then transferred upstairs. So right through the hospital, they'd taken those patients.
Is that normal to padlock a section of the hospital off?
Not something I'd ever seen before. No.
When you say positive, what do you mean
They
positive?
tested positive for COVID,
And how was they testing them for?
Yeah, how were they doing that?
Well, at the beginning of all of this, I remember hearing a conversation that come from our junior sister that was on the ward. One of the staff nurses asked if in the night, whilst we were on the night shift, what happens if we have a query coming, query COVID, sorry. And she was instructed to use the green flu swabs that we keep in the storeroom. So
A flu swab?
yeah, a green flu swab that we'd had on the ward for as long as I've worked there.
A flu swab to detect COVID?
Yes.
Or coronavirus?
But how did they even assume? Well, how did they know what a COVID query, as you put it, was? Was that purely based on symptoms?
Yeah, basically.
Just symptoms?
Just symptoms, yeah. And that was at the beginning. We were using the green flu swabs. For how long that period went on for, I couldn't tell you. But I know I definitely heard that conversation, and we continued to use green flu swabs.
So would they be sent off? And then would you have to wait?
Yeah, we'd have to wait for the port to come and collect
How
them.
long roughly?
They were pretty instant. The porters were coming to our ward. But
Yeah.
they'll say that. The porters wouldn't actually come onto our wards because they'd managed to sort of scare all the staff around the hospital that they couldn't walk onto the COVID ward.
Right.
So things were all done kind of outside the door. There was a lot of that going on.
Right.
But then the PCRs did come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we started having all these different tests, which didn't make any sense because I know we was using the green flu swabs at the beginning.
How long roughly from like end of March, how long were you using those flu swabs for?
A good couple of weeks before
A couple
people
of
started
weeks.
talking about PCRs and that, yeah. and then there was a whole
But even with the
lot.
PCRs, how long would it take for the test to come back for that?
I don't know, because the nurses, that's something that they do, like they get onto the system to find out the results and things like that. I mean, I haven't
You
got
weren't involved with
access.
that?
No, I don't have
Okay.
anything to do with that. But they would put up on the board if they were positive or negatives, and they had to have 3 negatives before they were allowed to leave the ward. I believe that was kind of the rule. But it happened a lot. We were moving people all the time. We moved our positive patients quite a lot around that hospital.
Why would they be moving them so much if they weren't so busy?
Got no idea. It felt like nothing but distraction after distraction.
Like musical patients?
Always, and we were always told that the really poorly ones are elsewhere. But obviously they forget that we talk, and we have got friends on other wards, and we could see this on the iPods as well, which gives you the rundown of all the inpatients across the hospital. And it wasn't just our ward. A lot of the wards are quiet.
What, in the surrounding county?
Yeah.
Surrounding areas?
Yeah, all throughout that hospital.
Okay. So did the behaviour of staff change leading up to lockdown, especially regarding the amount of news coverage?
Staff were definitely scared.
You could see it?
Yeah, of course they were fearful. A lot of them are avid news watchers, so they were seeing visions on the TV.
Was you scared?
No, not. I was scared the very first night because.
Yeah, I was scared at the beginning.
Yeah, I was. I remember the very first night that we accepted a patient that we believed was a positive patient, and I cried on my friend's shoulder because I said I knew other things anyway. So I kind of thought, oh my God, this is it. We're all going to get finished off, if you like.
Yeah. So the fear was there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But we both agreed between each other that we would only get scared once we really believed what we were seeing right in front of our eyes, and it worked. I think I worked it out in about 3 shifts. I stopped wearing a mask.
So you didn't wear a mask and you've been fine?
I've been absolutely fine.
Is everyone else?
And I
been
didn't
fine?
abide by lockdown, and I stayed at my mum's house during all this, and I went home to my 6-year-old daughter, and she's absolutely fine. So my mum and dad, they're both of the age of over 60 as well, so...
Right, this might be going over some old ground, but now the spike in deaths began to spike immediately after lockdown was announced. So how inundated was Maidstone Hospital with COVID patients, just to reiterate that?
Certainly wasn't on our ward anyway. There was nights that me and my friend had played cards on a night shift. We even fell asleep. I feel terrible admitting that, but when you've literally got nothing to do, maybe 2 or 3
Is that the norm, with
No,
regards to how busy you normally are?
No, because we worked on an elderly frail unit, so we often we'd have basically anything that come from a nursing home, if they'd fallen over, running temperature or whatever, that nursing homes couldn't deal with, they would end up with us, and our ward has always been extremely busy.
So
the sweat would be pouring off
in
me
normal
both
times,
shifts.
as it were, you wouldn't be able to play Snap?
No.
Is this when the TikTok videos
Yeah.
were being made
yeah.
across the
We'll get to
hospital?
that.
I remember that, yeah.
It's that.
Manager encouraged it.
So flu season can last from December to May. Was there still a trickle of flu and pneumonia patients amongst all the other so-called COVID positive patients?
Well, to me, they all looked like they just had a cold anyway. So we wouldn't really have been able to tell, would we, if they just had a cold? Because immediately everybody got tested for COVID, and they came back.
So those only tested for COVID and nothing else?
Yeah. As far as I'm aware.
Okay. Well, it brings to the next point. Were the hospital staff able to differentiate between flu, pneumonia and COVID in order to prescribe the correct treatment?
Well, clearly not, because everyone, to me, looked like they just had flu, and I haven't worn a mask and I haven't caught anything, so is it just flu?
Especially if you said at the beginning they're only diagnosing on symptoms.
Yes. Which is...
And by the sounds of it, even if they did have a test, visually, there were...
Flus and colds haven't even been spoke about since I've worked through this period. Like, everything is
Almost
a
forgot.
coronavirus now.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
everything, absolutely everything is a coronavirus. No, I kept saying to girls, I'm sure about 6,500,000 people die every year due to flu anyway. So what about these numbers? What about the people that
Yeah,
we would
worldwide.
normally expect in with just flu? But that kind of got... it was
Yeah,
just
that's a
been
good
COVID.
point, because
Yeah.
even the World Health Organisation says up to 650,000
That's right.
people a year
Every year.
die from flu and
Flu,
pneumonia.
yeah. So did those people just disappear?
So the fact that they've not even been acknowledging it over COVID is a bit bizarre,
certainly doesn't
isn't it?
feel like it.
It
Our
doesn't
ward-
disappear, does it?
And yeah, and where's everybody gone? The hospital's really, really quiet. And for being a COVID ward, and the pictures that you were that you were getting shown on your news stations, I mean, it wasn't anything like that at all. These people were laying on their beds with their iPads, some of them.
Right.
They was.
So it wasn't like death's door
No,
situation?
absolutely not, no.
Okay.
I'm sure, I mean, I can't vouch for all the wards. I didn't work on ITU or anything like that. I have heard some stories. But how do we know that those people didn't just have pneumonia? And they would have been ill this year anyway.
Well, we know that the PCR test wasn't designed to detect a virus anyway, so if it was flu and pneumonia, it's been overlooked or been misdiagnosed as
COVID.
As COVID.
Like everything.
Okay. What steps did the hospital take in order to receive the predicted thousands of COVID cases? Well, Maidstone in particular. What did it do to prepare for that?
Well, we didn't. I mean, I remember when it first happened, PPE was made available. We had surgical masks. We even had some like long farmer's gloves that turned up on the ward and some blue gowns. But immediately after stuff sort of turned up, it was taken by site practitioners to furnish the other wards. It was taken with one hand, given with one hand, taken with another, because we're always being told that they're running low elsewhere and things like that. And the same as our hand sanitisers in the wards and that, they literally ran out just overnight. We even had people gain access to the building, steal our hand wash, steal our hand sanitisers. And it was never really replaced as such, you know.
Well, because I specifically remember there was a huge argument over the PPE. I mean, but what's funny is that this argument is never presented during normal flu season, is it?
No.
But only with...
I've dealt with patients that have CRE and also TB, and we've never been offered the masks before.
And it never seems to make... There's no proof that it makes any sort of a difference anyway.
Absolutely, that's right, yeah. It's kind of always been like on your own head be it kind of thing, and that was kind of that was the view that I took this time as well, and thought within a few shifts I can see that these people don't really look... I'm certainly not that concerned about them or catching whatever it is they think that they've got, so I took the mask off, and everybody knows in that hospital that I haven't worn a mask since about day 2.
And you're fine?
I'm fine.
Okay. Describe your average working shift. We know that you've been playing cards. Can you elaborate any further?
What, before COVID or after COVID?
During COVID.
During COVID.
Compared with normal times.
Staffing levels, we were immediately given more members of staff. They stopped taking members of staff, which is something they always used to do, and that was purely because there wasn't so many patients within the hospital, so they didn't have anywhere else to push them, basically.
Right.
But then that kind of petered off as well pretty quickly. Within a couple of weeks, 1 minute they allowed us to have overrun on staff just in case people turned up, and then they realised that that wasn't going to happen. We weren't going to have a massive influx of really poorly people, so they started knocking the staff. So that's now why I've lost work, because I'm only bank staff.
So you lost work?
Yeah, because obviously
in a hospital over the pandemic.
Yes, quite a few of us. I remember one night actually there was quite a few of us stood round the stroke ward desk, all asking to be placed somewhere to work, and because they had closed wards and there was less people in the hospital, quite a few people got sent home that night. Me being one of them, I actually left the hospital and went home that night. A few of them had travelled all the way from London as well, which were regular agency workers for us. They got sent home, and I haven't seen them again in this period. We haven't had to use agencies at all now.
So out of doctors, nurses and bank staff, like who had been reduced mainly, do you think?
CSWs definitely, so the level 2s, which
what
is
are they?
my level. So you're clinical support worker, so you're a carer before you become registered as a registered staff nurse. So yeah, really mainly my level. I think the staff nurses must have struggled. They must be struggling a little bit, but because I don't see what's available for the staff nurses, I couldn't tell you what as far as their work's dropping off.
What about A&E? Did you get a glimpse of that?
Yeah, a couple of times, because I always go out for my break in the middle of the night on my night shift, so I would make an effort to walk through A&E. It was dead down there. It was completely bloody dead.
Dead?
Dead, like dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop in the hospital. A lot of this.
Well, that's unheard of, isn't it?
We all spoke about how we were all feeling the cold in that hospital, and that was because there was lack of body heat.
And the lack of movement.
Yeah, and lack of movement, yeah.
Okay. Were you encouraged to make TikTok videos? If so, how did time and situation allow this?
I don't agree with anything like that, so I wouldn't have been part of it. But I did hear from a couple of the girls that our ward manager, yes, did try and round the girls up and make a TikTok video. A lot of them took pictures of themselves in their PPE. Found that quite fun to post online and that.
Would you agree that making TikTok videos is embarrassing?
Yeah, I told them all that. I said, I can't believe that you're even considering things like that when the outside world believes that we're rushed off our feet in here and that we're having a pandemic.
Because what I couldn't get my head around, and which I've had arguments with people over these TikTok videos, is this would never be allowed to happen, or you would never have the time to do that in normal times.
We wouldn't.
You only have to visit a hospital for anything.
Flat out, always, yeah. It is usually really, really hard work up there. I've got a couple of friends that are quite awake to this situation, and they've agreed that if the girls ever have to go back to working like we did before, they wouldn't actually be able to handle it, because some of the staff nurses, I mean, I've witnessed arguments when one of them's only had one patient and the others had two to look after. They were falling out over it. Yeah, because they're just into this at the minute. They really are. The brainwashing is something else.
Okay. Did any nurses die of COVID-19 in your hospital? And if so, how was this confirmed?
Not that I know of. I do know of a CSW at my level that he spent some time on John Day ward. I think he had pneumonia, which I'm sure went down as COVID. As far as I'm aware, he's back now. He survived. But that's the only one that I know of.
The only instance you know of?
Yes.
Bearing in mind you work in a COVID
and he
ward.
didn't work, and he didn't actually work on the COVID ward, so again,
it's just,
he was just had pneumonia.
It was something.
It was his year, yeah.
Just regular illness.
He's had the flu jab.
He probably had the flu jab, yeah.
Yeah, that won't help.
No, something else they like to give.
Did you notice an increase in stress levels in any staff members during this pandemic?
Well, I'd say their stress levels went down because they haven't had hardly any patients to look after. But the nurses will find stress in anything, so they're good at that.
Because I could imagine the job in general is stressful, but I'd say, going by what you just said, more so the stress would be there in normal times because of the sheer work volume.
Yes, basically, yeah. We, through this period, really, our ward worked in some ways how it should work. We had time for people. But you don't really need 7 members of staff maybe to look after 2 patients. So it's probably a little bit extreme, isn't it? Yeah.
So going on what you just said about capacity and amount of patients and whatnot, how do you think a hospital at reduced capacity affected the health of the local population in regards to checkups, treatments, operations, etc.?
Well, I would imagine a lot of my friends and close family and that have just stayed away from the hospital. It's probably not a bad thing, but they have stayed away purely because they were led to believe that if you stay away from the NHS, you're allowing them to get on with their heavy workload up there.
When in reality, going by what you said, they were staying at home when they didn't have to.
Didn't need to. No, definitely not. No, didn't need to. No, that hospital's never been so quiet.
Has there been any talk in the hospital about the backlogs of treatments?
It's not something that I would have been told about. I know oncology department got closed at the beginning for a short space of time.
How long was oncology shut?
I'm not really sure. I don't know if they were running some treatments maybe on the side, like some chemos and that were maybe important.
Is it back open now?
Yes, I believe so. I don't know at what capacity. I don't know whether it's full capacity. I'm not sure. There are definitely some changes up there at the moment.
So, this question, were your hours increased during lockdown? But you said at certain points they were reduced.
They are now, yeah. I haven't got any work now.
Right. Okay.
And what about the discussions? What sort of discussions was there amongst the staff about COVID? Like, was there any internal sort of group chats or anything like that?
With the views on it?
I told the girls from shift 2 or 3 that what I knew about other things going on in the world and how that they might use this against us, but everyone just thinks I was off my head. I do remember working with a mental health nurse on the very first night that we had a first COVID positive patient, and he was very clued up on the current New World Order, Nasara, Jassara, a lot of stuff that he knew about. He was getting quite excited that night, thinking that stuff was coming. But the nurses, they just didn't want to listen. Nurses are very, very ignorant.
Was you allowed, obviously amongst yourselves, because obviously as this was going on and things that you're getting less and less patients, and obviously the talk amongst the staff must have been like, what's going on?
Oh, yeah,
we're seeing this at home, and there's massive threat and fear level going up, and yet we're not receiving any patients. What sort of discussions was there about that amongst the staff?
Yeah, comparing reality with the news.
I think a lot of the girls believed that we must be lucky here in Maidstone, and that was kind of how they went along for months, and then it was just...
So, we're led to believe that London was the epicentre, really, wouldn't we?
We don't really know much about what happened up there, do we?
Bearing in mind the first cases were in York and Brighton, and they were never overrun, were they? No. So, you only have to look out your window or go up Tesco's to know that... Yeah. Where is it?
Yeah. Maidstone Hospital is usually a very busy hospital.
I know.
At one period, we got put on divert from Gravesend. I think I gave you that piece of paper, didn't I? The email, to say that we were on divert. They were overrun. This was only a couple of weeks ago. Apparently, Gravesend Hospital, or Dartford, sorry, were overrun with patients, and we were going to have to take some of their COVID patients. I think we took one.
So they said, get ready for an influx.
Yeah, it was again just pushing the fear. They said that for 3 days, I think it was a 3 or 4 day period, we was on divert for Dartford. So any of their COVID patients we were expecting to get, we had one that I know of. And that the ward stayed completely silent for that entire night. We sat there thinking, might get some from Dartford tonight, but we never did.
And bearing in mind, Dartford's a lot closer and more populated.
Yeah. But we never did.
To London.
Never did.
Was you ever told by any senior staff that you weren't allowed to about discussion, at least outside of work, like gagging orders or anything like that?
Yeah. Although I wasn't part of the chat because I don't agree with talking about work outside anyway.
So like speaking
that.
freely.
Yeah. The girls do have a chat forum. I believe that was on Messenger. Sent you the screenshot, and that was we was told that they were going to be shutting that down and that we wasn't to discuss COVID or any of the patients with outside sources, and definitely not online.
Why not discuss COVID though? Why?
Because basically they knew it was a lie, wasn't it? What was going on in the news was not what was happening in that hospital. They was just sitting on a big secret. That's how I view it anyway. And I was telling the girls this, that you are sitting on a secret. But they're just following policy, they're just doing their job.
Are there any other nurses that you may have worked with or know of that have the same views or are questioning it in any way?
I do have a friend up there. Is it worth mentioning the fact that she's a daughter of a high-up Freemason? Which is why she's awake, yeah. But I see her about 6 weeks ago, and we hugged in the car park, and she cried, and she said, God, I can't believe I've bumped into you. I said I was glad to see you. She's the only other person that completely sees through this. Completely. She knows that it's nothing to be worried about. But she is wearing a mask purely because she doesn't want to lose her job.
Is there a lot of that up there, do you think?
Yeah, a lot. A hell of a lot. Especially from the CSW. At my level, the uneducated level, I think it's a bit easy for us to see. But if you're a nurse and you're going on getting... results and things like that, I think there is the push there for you to follow policy all the time, so they are masked up, a lot of them.
So regarding masks, we know that masks in a medical setting is directly linked to fatigue and mistakes within the hospital and operations and whatnot. So what was the view on wearing it and like breathing in your own CO2 and the sheer discomfort?
I told many of them that I like oxygen and I don't really fancy breathing in my own CO2 gases and that, but they kind of looked at me like I was talking gibberish.
Were you resented for not wearing a mask?
Yeah, I'll get many looks, but nobody actually challenges me.
Right, because they had no right to either.
Yeah, I knew my rights. There was no way they were going to muzzle me, and I told them that from day one. I'm quite a loud person when I want to be.
Because it's my understanding that masks are purely there in a medical setting for the operating table, so you don't contaminate open wounds.
Yeah. And there's even been studies showing that don't work as well, isn't it?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, the masks. I remember we had the hazmat and that. I remember walking on a shift one night and the hazmat was hanging up, and I thought, oh Christ, we're going to have to put that on. But it never got worn. It was more of a joke, kind of hanging there from a drip stand. I was fit tested for a mask, which I failed. On 2 occasions I failed. Actually, I think I only know a handful of people that did pass the fit testing.
So basically, if it doesn't fit, don't wear it. It's pointless.
Yeah, my face is too small. I can't fit into one. It was never going to be safe, never.
Because they're universal sizes, aren't they? Which means there's gaps everywhere.
Gaps everywhere. And then they sprayed this lovely saccharin stuff in your face to see if you could... Again, they just sprayed that. And I was sat there with diabetic. It's sugar. Saccharin, full sugar. And that was what they used, if you could taste it and things like that, if you had it in your eyes, like whilst the big thing was on your head, like the beekeeper's head helmet.
This to test for gaps, you mean?
Yeah.
Right.
But they never told any of us what it was they were spraying. I asked to see what it was they were spraying in our faces.
And it's sugar?
And it was saccharin, yeah. So I was sat there with a diabetic and I said, I think you better let her know that you're spraying saccharin in her face.
Is saccharin natural?
No.
I'm not sure.
No.
It's basically...
This was 3M, made by 3M.
Right. That's not great.
But, you know, and that was a ward sister. Just like the ward sisters are allowed to give the flu vaccinations as well. With no clue about what's really in that vax.
Was the subject of vaccination regarding the flu jab and this upcoming COVID vax, was it discussed in any length of
not with any management. I do remember having a couple of conversations with a couple of staff nurses on the ward. I sort of said to them, you know that this will be the push for a vax, and all of them said, well, we won't be having a vax. They maybe knew that
they weren't keen.
Yeah, they weren't. What they were seeing wasn't quite adding up, but they knew that they weren't going to have an injection either.
Would these same people normally have the flu jab every year?
Some of them, I believe, have had the flu jab purely because it's administered by the ward manager on our ward, and she does push it. So,
how do they feel about taking that on a yearly basis? Do they know anything about it?
No, they don't know anything about it. They believe that it's...
Do the people who administer the flu jab know anything about that jab and what's in it?
I wouldn't have thought so. Would you be given it if you knew anything about it? No. So they can't know anything about it.
Well, that's the whole Hippocratic oath, isn't it? You should not do...
Absolutely. What you have got no idea about, yeah. But they haven't.
Yet they administer it.
Cruel games being played.
Okay. Anything you can think of, Tobe?
What about the site practitioner? I remember being... I don't know if I got... Did I say about that? When she said that it would close the hospital because of the degowning areas. Did I say about that? Right at the very beginning, I remember standing outside one night having a cigarette with one of the site practitioners, asking her, like, what could we expect? What's it going to do to this hospital? And she said, well, it will close this hospital, purely because we haven't got degowning areas, which we haven't, on any of our side rooms. She said, so when you're obviously taking off the contagious gear, it's going to be in the air. She said, so it will close our hospital and we will all get it. That's what her exact words were. And I went home shitting my pants that night.
So you had the fear put in you.
And she was a site practitioner and has worked there for, I don't know, 20 years probably.
Just another thing, obviously all over the news they was talking about these deaths in all the hospitals across the country, and about body bags and like the bodies that have died. And obviously, heard that there's a fast track now because there's no autopsies, no nothing. Anyone that was died or labelled with a COVID-19 death, there's no autopsies, no families and stuff come and see them, etc.
That's right.
So what was the?
We did obviously stop the visiting. In my ward manager's favour, to be fair to her, there was a couple of occasions where I believe that family rang in and kind of pleaded with the boss. And she did allow them some time to come and say goodbye to people, which I thought was quite fair of her.
Yeah. Good on her.
It's the least you could do.
But I haven't actually dealt with many deaths during this, probably less than what I would normally deal with. But each death, right from the very beginning, we had our body bags taken. So every single...
Taken by who?
By the porter, because we usually have to ring the porters to ask for a body bag when someone dies, and then they get taken to Rose Cottage.
So at the start of this, did you have body bags brought up to the wards in anticipation for?
No.
But that's normal procedure.
That is normal procedure. Is when someone dies, we have to ring the porters. Obviously, ring the doctor to confirm the death, and then we ring the porters for the body bag. So we lay the body out, and put them in the body bag. But from day one of this, the porters were telling us there are no body bags. We're not having body bags.
But why?
I have no idea. So we had to double wrap all of those contagious bodies in double sheets.
Bed sheets.
Bed sheets. Yeah, and that was how they went to the morgue. Yeah. And
and they was just transported down the morgue just in
just
sheets.
as they were, yeah, with their gown and the sheets double wrapped.
These highly contagious dead bodies.
Yeah.
Were there any what's it called when you dispose of surgical biohazard? Were there any biohazard bins?
No more than what we normally have. I mean, obviously we do have them for our gloves and things like that, and like the pads and things like that go in the incineration bin. But no, we have not. There's not one more single bin in that entire hospital.
Oh, so
during this whole period. No.
They didn't up it.
No, and there's none outside, and they still expect people to go in and out of the building. Yet there's not even a bin outside. There's many masks chucked around the building. We didn't have any extra. Oh, another thing to mention, we also, when the body bags were taken, when a patient used to pass away, we'd have like this piece of paper that had the cross on it and obviously their details, date of birth, national health numbers and all that. They got taken as well. So we had no body bags and we had no ID cards. We started putting in these little padded fabric hearts instead.
Where did they come from?
I've got no idea. I don't know if they were made for us by maybe the people that made us all these visors and that, which got chucked in a corner.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. There was a lot of people around Barham, around Maidstone, that was donating these. They was making the homemade sort of masks and stuff like that. That was being donated.
They're still there on the ward.
So yeah, what happened to them? So
they got slung in a bag and stuck in the storeroom.
Because obviously you don't know the source where they've come from. And
there was that as well, but I don't think that was the reason, because I know a few of the sisters, they did wear some stuff that was made, so that couldn't have really been too hot topic, obviously, the source of where it come from. It was just a case of we just didn't need it, so we didn't wear them. We didn't like these visors and that. I mean, they're awful things to wear.
And talking about that, there was obviously all over the news this every Thursday everyone's clapping for the NHS and stuff like that. What was the general census in the hospitals? Because I know that there was a lot of people sort of donating food and bringing sort of packs and stuff up.
We've never eaten so well. We had our fridges full. We haven't. I remember going up there one day just to see how busy it was up there in the middle of the day shift. And I went into the staff car park and they had like a big delivery van of all this farm food was delivering, and the staff were allowed to just go and help themselves as far as I was aware. We've had bottles of water. We've never had water up there ever before. We had sandwiches. Our staff fridge is now full of sandwiches, all made for in the kitchen. But things we've never ever had. We've never been fed and watered whilst being on shift.
So yeah, it's all extra. Yeah. So there's not obviously the cost implication for that.
I'm sure. Yeah, it must have risen.
So you got turned into a couch potato.
Basically, yeah, because it wasn't
busy.
Good stuff, obviously. Yeah.
So what was the staff feel like? The staff morale, as in, because obviously everyone's sort of clapping for the NHS on a Thursday. What was the general thoughts about that?
I kept saying to the girls, I think it's a fraud. I mean, I didn't clap. I don't agree with all this. It just felt like a big fat lie to me. But
I clapped twice and it got embarrassing.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I know the nurses do, and I think, quite honestly, I think that they're glory hunters. I think they're quite happy to take all that.
Well, we know that we was clapping for them to sit around.
Yeah. Yeah, you were all being lied to. Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. We know the hospitals were empty. Yeah. I mean, did you hear any talk of Nightingale?
There was a bit of talk. We had a few members of staff who apparently had friends that were going to work there, but it never actually came to anything. I did read that there was 47 patients at its maximum on there, but then I also have been told that it didn't even open at all, so I'm not sure.
Because I remember I was working somewhere around about Easter weekend time, and the guy's daughter was working there. She was volunteering there, and she said there's like 20 odd people in there, and they're all old men.
Sounds about right. Yeah. I think 47 was the maximum at any time.
But we don't know whether that was just flu and pneumonia.
Exactly, and it probably was. It was.
We're talking about that. We from the 28th of March to present, there's been no ONS statistics for flu and pneumonia deaths. And they've said that they can't divulge that till July next year.
They've hijacked the numbers, haven't they?
Well, that's what it's seeming like.
Certainly feels like it. I mean, those people didn't, to me, I never encountered anybody that I thought, oh my God, they look really poorly. Never.
So it's regular.
But I don't work every single night. I'm sure some of the girls might be able to tell you slightly different stories. Oh yeah, we have had some really poorly people.
So with regards to being there, a massive difference compared with normal times.
Oh yes, yeah.
With there being a so-called highly infectious disease, it seems like it's regular people dying of regular things,
Yeah. And the rest of the masses have just been feared into not coming to Maidstone Hospital, so they've stayed away. And that's kind of what happened. The hospitals remained.
Well, it's like
really
what
quiet.
Louise Hampton was saying, because she worked on Treble One, didn't she? She said she was sitting around at times, minutes at a time before the
There
phone was
wasn't
going,
calls, yeah.
and when normally it'd be call after call, and she was saying that people were scared to go to the hospital.
Well, I remember one night I went out on my break, so it must have been about midnight or 12:30 in the night, and I went out and I came across an ambulance that was shooting up Stone Street. So I followed that ambulance. I followed it all the way to Park Wood, where they go and sit and have their break, and there was about 20 other ambulances sitting in the car park, just all sitting there having something to eat, and that was 1 o'clock in the morning.
That's another thing we've heard about the ambulances. Apparently, there was we've heard where it's
to
gone.
put their
They was
sirens
told to be driving around putting the sirens on, even though there wasn't an emergency,
believe that, no.
to put
impression.
put the impression that the hospitals are manic busy. So there's obviously in the peak of, should we say peak, there was lots of ambulances flying around with sirens on with no patients in
Like
it.
it's World War Z.
Yeah.
It's not, is it?
No. Big fat lie.
Right, I think that's
Big fat lie.
that's great.
Anything else we need to...
Well,
thanks
can only
telling
just say
us.
thanks for exposing the truth and just telling us your truth, and from first-hand knowledge of the facts.
Yeah.
We just hope that this allows other people to come forward and tell the truth, because to put the country at ease, as we know,
exactly.
as we know on
People
Monday,
to
to
people.
get
We
out.
need to chill out.
Yeah.
We need to relax.
We-
And realise we've been duped.
Yeah.
We've been lied to.
A good example of how the fear was put through people, actually, my next door neighbour, who I live next door to, is a staff nurse on Pie Oliver Ward at Maidstone. Now, from day one, obviously because our children weren't at school, she allowed her little boy to come and play with my girl. Fine, I didn't have a problem with that. But when she saw me in the hospital, she would slink up against the wall and give me at least sort of a couple of metre distance. Yeah, we'd passed our kids over.
The
Yeah.
drama pass.
So I was just thinking, it's a brainwash. If you care about your kid that much, would you
But
really
that's
have let
when-
him round?
That's the trouble I've had with everyone.
Yeah.
It's the fear. Rationality just goes out the window.
Absolutely.
You're not thinking straight when you're scared, and that's why everyone's so easily manipulated.
Yeah.
Because the fear's in there. What can you do to someone who's scared?
Yeah.
Anything.
You can't get through and have a rational conversation.
No, definitely not. Anything else I need to say about that?
Especially when they refuse to look at any other facts or findings outside of the BBC.
That's half the problem.
The avid news watchers.
BBC, yes. Certainly never any scenes like what you saw about people dropping dead on. Absolute rubbish.
And now we've got a
Absolutely
case-demic, which is a complete joke.
Well, they've gone from COVID-19 to now it's just coronavirus, because everybody's got coronavirus.
rubbish. Yeah, trying to mind program that
Yeah.
word
Yeah,
instead now.
so they're detecting
It's
sequences
getting ready to
that
to
are
cover
found
himself.
in most human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're going. I think they're going to get ready to cover himself and say, "Well, we never said it was anything other than coronavirus. It was down to you to do your own fucking research." Like,
And obviously, Calv, you know a bit more about the.
yeah, ask me about the vax and that, because that's what they're preparing to do, isn't it? They're going to vax us. That's work with the flu vax.
Is this a
because-
mandatory vaccination that you have? Would it
Well,
jeopardise your job if you don't
Allegedly,
take it?
but I only know that because I've spoken to someone who works on the board of trustees.
Because no one must forget the Nuremberg Code and informed consent. That is basically a human right.
Informed. That's half the problem. They don't
Then
inform, though,
it's-
do they?
Well, who is ever informed
No.
when their child gets vaccinated?
Not about what's in it.
No one knows of
No.
the ingredients. If you were to investigate each ingredient, each person might think twice before poisoning their child.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But if you was to do that as a parent and inject any of that into any of them ingredients into your child
CPS,
outside of it, you'd be
Your child
arrested,
would be
be charged.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the insanity of it.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So,
And it's untested, isn't it? Because obviously, do you want to just talk about the COVID test now? It hasn't been isolated, so any tests that they're administering at the moment.
well, any vaccine's supposed to, well, they claim that it has a live virus in it, but how can you have a so-called live virus in it when the virus hasn't been purified and isolated in the first place? It's just fairy tale land. It's just full of toxins. It's just full of poisons, and that's what you're injecting into your intramuscular system, bypassing all your body's safety mechanisms. No one wants to acknowledge the increasing rise in neurological disorders that correlate with increased mandated increased mandated vaccines. No one wants to talk about that. Oh, autism's genetic. Oh, is it? Geneticists are the first to say the prevalence of autism does not happen so quickly if it is down to genes. They're the first to say that. So
must be that live virus they put in the vaccine.
well, this they call it a live virus because they've cultured it in a laboratory and then just bung it in a vaccine. But if you knew anything about the viral culturing methods, you know all they basically do is starve and poison a cell culture, watch the cells deteriorate and die, and say, oh, that's your virus. If people were aware of the methods, they would laugh.
Yeah.
It is comical.
We've done better in science class.
And we're told that this is science. So the particles that they're seeing on an electron microscope, they haven't isolated that specific particle and got its full genetic sequence of the genome. They haven't done that. They claim they have, like Dr. Hilary Jones claimed it when he was ridiculed in Piers Morgan. He said, "Oh, we've got the full genetic sequence of the viral genome," but all they do is
this the Dr. Hilary that said a few months ago that said about not to wear masks because they're absolutely useless, and then a few months later now he's telling everybody they've got to wear masks.
Like I've always suggested.
It's a campaign of disinformation.
Yes,
but yeah, the big one on that was we have the full viral genome, the full genetic sequence. But what they don't tell you is that all they've done is got a partial genetic sequence from an impure sample, and then they go on GenBank, get some primers to make up the other sequences to attain that full genetic sequence. So basically, they've mentally constructed the viral genome. In no field of science do you mentally construct something and call it proof.
No, it's insanity.
It's insanity. It's insanity.
It's crazy. And there's a whole hospital that's just there full of people that believe this, and they're the guys that we go to when we need help. That's
exactly
my concern.
This is the concern, isn't it? These are the authorities that we basically hand over our entire trust to.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's across the board. It's not just the medical practitioners.
Yeah.
It's the police. It's
Absolutely.
it's the courts. It's courts. It's government. The MP. It's from the top down. And that's obviously where the information is coming down. What is fed down is from the top down. Because even though you might have a graduate degree or whatever, you're only repeating and pass test on what information has been passed down to you from the top. And we're seeing a lot. We're seeing a lot of sort of private specialists coming out and speaking out against what the government employed sort of practitioners are, because they're actually critical thinkers and realising that what they've been taught and what they've been told is factually incorrect.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's critical thinking. All I'm seeing is a dumbed down populace that refuses to open a book.
Yes. No one is willing to even research half of this.
They're quite happy just to watch the news. But we all know the news is owned by 5 companies. The whole of media by just 5 companies.
Yeah.
So that's a complete conflict of interest, and no one wants to think outside the box. No one wants to find out anything for themselves.
As long as I'm getting paid, that's all I've continued to hear through this whole period. I don't care, Claire, as long as I'm getting paid.
But that's going to stop.
Yeah. Let's hope so.
That's going to
stop. And then you might hear a few more truths from up there, how busy they've been.
I think it's a sad case of history that people only really take notice when it affects them, especially their pocket.
Yeah.
That is exactly right.
And that's the sad.
That is exactly
sad truth.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Right, well, guys, listen, that's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much indeed for coming together and exposing this. We'll get this out, and hopefully, please, everyone, take note and share about, because people, the general populace, need the facts. They need the truth. Yeah. You're not going to see the truth in the newspapers or in the mainstream media.
No, we need to do our own journalism.
That's right. Yeah,
it's the only way.
Yeah.
We are the news.
First-hand knowledge of the facts.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
From the ground up, grassroots. Brilliant.
Thank you.